Hey everybody. So we are going to go ahead and talk about the Detroit Pistons today, about their offseason. We're going to mention that, kind of talk about potential different targets, moves, different things that they can do as a franchise to move forward. Obviously, last year didn't go too well for the Pistons. However, I do see a couple things that they can do heading into this next season that can help them roster-wise. All right, so obviously we're going to talk about the draft in just a minute. But let's kind of first recap about the Pistons from last year. They were 20-52, which was the worst record in the Eastern Conference. They were not a great team overall. The one bright spot, because most of these teams that you see in the top five, they are usually teams that struggle with, their offense. You're going to see like their efficiency numbers are going to be like bottom 5, bottom 8 in the league. However, the Pistons, their defense actually was about mid-level in the league. You look at their defensive rating, it was 16th in the league, which wasn't horrible. You look at the fact that they were 14th in the league in opponent turnovers. So some good stuff from the Pistons this last season, but obviously they want to get better. And how do they get better going in the offseason? So let's talk about, let's look at their cap sheet here. So looking at their cap sheet currently, they don't have any pressing free agents. Obviously last season they spent a lot of money to go get Jeremy Grant, and what the case is for them is that they are going to look to improve this season, but they have this young core of players: Killian Hayes, Sekou Doumbouya, Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey played well last year. Diallo in the Oklahoma City trade played very solid. And basically Detroit has to make a decision of, okay, do we want to try to go big fish hunting in free agency, because they kind of have the money. Obviously, they're going to bring in some money with Cade Cunningham's contract, and we'll kind of get into their number one pick selection and kind of what's been going on there, rumor-wise. But the one thing that I wanted to really mention with them is that Jeremy Grant is the team's best player. He had a good year last year, but I don't particularly know how well he fits in long-term. And, I say that with this, though. Is that I don't potentially see them moving off Jeremy Grant at all. But again, it's just something to kind of keep in mind. Him and Cade Cunningham are probably a little bit more at odds as far as kind of how they play. So we'll definitely kind of keep an eye on the Detroit Pistons this season and see what they do. But again, focusing on the offseason, they have a couple of free agents that are in question. A couple that I don't think they're going to be back in Dennis Smith Jr. barely played for the team. I think he's probably done in the NBA. They also had Wayne Ellington, who I believe is probably going to be a guy who goes and gets, a little bit from a contending team. A team is, a team that needs shooting and a little bit of defense. Pretty much every contending team, or really any NBA team. So I think he's probably not going to stay in a rebuilding team like Detroit. Hamidou Diallo, who was picked up from the Oklahoma City trade, he is actually one guy that I think is interesting, because he is someone who I believe is still very young, and he can probably grow with the team. And so I think he is currently going to be a restricted free agent, so it's going to be interesting to see what the Pistons do there. Ultimately, I see the Pistons not really making too many big roster shakeups in free agency or in the trade market. I just don't think that they have any assets that they want to part with, and I'm pretty sure they're pretty set with just moving forward with kind of what their roster was last year. All right, so let's kind of move into the draft portion. So the big thing with Detroit, and I want to kind of spend most of my time on talking about this, is that Detroit had been rumored about trading down in the draft, and I don't know if that's the best move for them. I can see why some people are okay with that. To me, I think it's just as simple as you draft Cade Cunningham and you leave, and that's it, right? But the only thing that comes with that is that you potentially could maybe get a team to sucker down and say, hey, we're going to go trade up, and, you know, maybe Cleveland wants Cunningham. Maybe, you know, we've already heard reports that Houston wants to trade up to try to get Cade Cunningham. So do you make a trade where, yeah, you do sacrifice kind of the consensus number one overall pick, but understanding that the team or the draft this year doesn't have a team-altering star. Cunningham is good. I think he'll be an all-star. I think him, but I also believe that Evan Mobley of USC, and Jalen Green are all going to be guys who are going to be kind of all-stars for their career. Then it takes a little bit of a drop-off. So if you can stay within the top three of your Detroit and pick up a asset in the future with maybe a first-round pick, then how ideal would that be for the team? So, in my opinion, I think you draft Cade Cunningham, and then, you know, just kind of ride it out with some of these young players. Pick and choose. You know, Demboy has been in Detroit for a little bit now, and you kind of hope for that third-year growth from him. But at the same time, you also have Killian Hayes, who was injured last year. It'll be interesting to see how him and Cade Cunningham kind of get along, as they're both kind of ball dominant and they need the ball in their hands. That's kind of who they are as a player. And yeah, I don't see anything drastic coming from Detroit. I think last year with COVID, I believe that kind of messed your season up a little bit, and they were still a good defensive team. Dwayne Casey is, I think, a good coach in the league, and if he can, you know, get a full season with that's actually relatively normal, then I believe he can actually have this team be fighting for a play-in spot. I don't see them as currently constructed, and with the assumption that they do draft Cade Cunningham, I don't see them being super, you know, contending as far as the playoffs go. I still do. They think they're maybe a year or two away, some more young pieces, but ultimately, if I'm the GM of the Detroit Pistons, I take Cunningham, I walk away happy, and we go from there. Let me take a look here. Let me show what was just going on here with the Detroit Pistons recently. All right, so Pistons here was a story, and it was initially a tweet by Adrian Wojnarowski. So he mentions that Cade Cunningham is not the official it's not a done deal with him being selected by Detroit, which I think is just kind of crazy. But ultimately, the tweet reads, Detroit's internal meetings are still revolving around three players for the number one pick on Thursday night: Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, and Evan Mobley. Detroit isn't fully there yet on committing to Cunningham with their first overall choice. I think because there's so many smoke screens during the NBA draft, I believe that this is something that just is ultimately, like, within a couple hours of the draft on Thursday, I think we're going to find out, okay, this is probably a little bit of a smokescreen, and, you know, the story will break. Like, it's going to be Cunningham, and Cunningham's going to be the guy, and they're going to move forward with that. So ultimately, I believe they select Cade Cunningham. They move forward with that, and I don't see drastic changes coming from this team. However, I do think they're a team that you can kind of just be excited about, more than any other Detroit team had been in the past. But the team doesn't have any bad money situation, or bad money contracts, I should say. Maybe you could debate Mason Plumlee, but ultimately there's not really too much there. I envision them bringing back Diallo. The Corey Joseph, only $2.5 million is guaranteed of his contract, so you kind of wonder if they're going to do anything with that. I don't think they would rush to bring him back, especially if they draft another ball handler as he plays point guard. But ultimately, that's it. I think for the Pistons, again, it's to have a good season, be able to move forward in a way that they can grow, because they're such a young team. Isaiah Stewart was somebody I didn't even mention, but he had a good season last year. They had Josh Jackson have a little bit of a breakout last year as well. But ultimately, again, Pistons, I think they just stay the course. I think they just say, hey, we're going to continue to enroll with these young guys and see who's going to fit the culture from here on out and go from there. Detroit's an interesting thing. I do see that they're about a year or two away from actually anything big. But it's an exciting time. I think this is a team that could kind of play spoiler during the regular season for some teams. And they'll be a fun watch, I believe, with Cade Cunningham leading the way. That is it for this current stream. We're going to start another stream in just a moment with the Houston Rockets. And feel free to join us on that. Feel free to subscribe as well. Comment if you have any questions about their offseason or any targets or moves that potentially the Pistons could make. Feel free to throw it in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe, all those good things. And we'll see you in just one moment.